All right, hello and welcome everyone. Thanks for joining us for part two of our three-part series on the power and impact of small Christian communities, brought to you by Renew International. I'm Joseph Baricelli, and today we'll be discussing the Synod, Why You? Before we begin our presentation, let's review some important technological features and housekeeping reminders. This presentation is being recorded and will be available for future reference. However, our small group sharing time will not be recorded, so no worries about that. We never record any of our small group discussions. In addition, all participants will remain muted throughout the presentation portion, but will be unmuted for our small group sharing time. Next, please take a moment to locate the chat box icon, and that's at the toolbar at the bottom of your screen. We'll post important announcements, discussion questions, or links to resources mentioned here for your review. So you can access this content by clicking on the chat box icon. We'll also ask you to use the chat box to respond to discussion questions that we'll share with the entire group. Please note that we've dedicated some time at the end of our presentation for a formal Q&A to answer your questions live. So now that we've reviewed all of this together, I'd like to introduce to you Mayor Ernesto, who will be leading our discussion today. Mayor?
Thanks so much, Joe. Hi, everybody.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, good morning, depending on which time zone you're joining us from. As Joe mentioned, my name is Mayor Ernesto, and I've had the pleasure of working as the Associate Director here at Renew International for Pastoral Services since May of 2021. Prior to joining Renew, I worked at another Catholic nonprofit with a focus on youth and young adults, and I've been involved personally with various ministries over the years at different parishes where I've had the pleasure of being a parishioner. It's good to see some familiar names I saw as folks were in the waiting room and joining us. And to those who may be new to one of our webinars and to Renew, welcome. We're glad you're here. We love to talk about the power of small group experiences. And if you ask anyone on our staff, we could probably talk about it for hours and hours. But we'll keep our time limit short to just the 1 hour while we're here today. But we do welcome the opportunity for one-on-one conversations with those of you who might like to speak with someone from our team to learn even more about how small groups might support your parish. There's going to be a link up there on the screen. If you want to take a picture of that, jot it down. We can put that in the chat as well. But if you'd like to learn more information, you can use that link in the chat, and we'll follow up with you for a one-on-one conversation. So today, we wanted to have a chance for you all to have a very, very small taste of a faith sharing experience. So in our time together this afternoon, we'll give you that opportunity for a bite-sized sample of small group faith sharing. And when the time comes, Joe will come back to help move everybody into those small breakout rooms, and our recording will be paused, as he mentioned. We'll go over some of those details just before we send you into those breakout rooms, just in case some folks are joining us a little bit later after we've given these instructions. For those who may not have joined our first session, we started with the invitation from Pope Francis to enter to the entire church to reflect on a theme that is decisive for its life and mission, and wants the entire church to become synodal. The Synod is not an academic conference on theology of synodality. It's an experience of synodality. It's like the difference between a conference to discuss prayer and going on a retreat to pray, or the difference between talking about being in love, or talking about love and being in love. The three dimensions of the themes are communion, participation, and mission. These three dimensions are profoundly interrelated, and they're vital pillars of the synodal church, and there's no hierarchy in between them. So before we move any further along, I did want to take just a moment to address the why you, as it relates to the recent synthesis report of the Synod that came out last October, which highlights just some of these reasons. Synodality, our shared journey, is a wonderful way to think about this experience. The word synod comes from the Greek words meaning son and meaning with, and odos meaning path, and it refers to our shared journey. On October 28th of last year, 2023, a synodal church and mission synthesis report was provided to the people of the church. This synodal synthesis report is a guide for us for the next steps of the church that reflects a shared vision of dynamic, missionary, and a synodal church. It's the final report of the 16th General Assembly of the Synod on Synodality, which was a 2-year process of spiritual discernment that began in October of 2021. Some of you may have had an opportunity to participate in a listening session if your parish or your diocese was offering those to you, and there will be more to come this upcoming October. So why you? As I was preparing for our time together today, I actually went back and reread the synthesis report from last October. And I found just 3 takeaways to share with you all as they relate to the power and impact of small groups. If you haven't had a chance yet to read this full report, we'll put a link in the chat, and we encourage everybody to read it over. There may be other takeaways that you find to be very helpful for conversations you may be having at your own parish. But in the interest of our time together, I kept it to just 3 for us to discuss. And again, they're relating to small groups and the impact of small groups. In part 1, I really identified with the face of the synodal church, where we are gathered and sent by the Trinity. According to the teaching of the Second Vatican Council, the church is a people brought together by virtue of the unity of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. The Father, through the mission of the Son and the gift of the Spirit, involves us in communion and mission that moves us, and this is what was so powerful to me, moves us from the I to the we, and places us at the service of the world. In part 2, where we talk about how we are all missionaries and all disciples, we read that the church is mission. Rather than saying that the church has a mission, we affirm the church is mission. As the Father has sent me, so I send you, we read in John 20:21. If the mission is a grace involving all the church, the lay faithful contribute in a vital way to advancing that mission in all areas and in the ordinary situations of every day. Above all, where we, the faithful, are present, we are called to witness to Jesus Christ in daily life and to explicitly share the faith with others. And that's something we certainly do when we're in opportunities for small group faith sharing. And finally, in part 3, in weaving bonds and building communities, we see a synodal approach to formation. Every baptized person is called to take care of their own formation as a response to the gifts of the Lord, making use of the talents we've received in order that we bear fruit and put them at the service to all. The time that we read about that we know our Lord dedicated to the formation of his own disciples reveals to us the importance of this ecclesial formation. Before I introduce Be My Witness to you, which is a wonderful small group faith sharing resource that we offer at Renew, I wanted to share with you just a bonus that I found in the report, specific to weaving bonds and building communities. A takeaway that I found here in this section speaks to how there are several gospel passages that reveal that Jesus meets people in the uniqueness of their personal story and situation. He begins from the authenticity of relationship to which he commits himself wholeheartedly. He engages in gestures that communicate love and restore confidence. He makes new life possible with his presence, and those who meet him come away transformed. Now, when we look at Be My Witness, We experience these through a small group experience, encouraging parishioners and participants to grow and live out this mission. These are Christ-centered and spirit-led approaches that help us individually and as a community, growing in our discipleship and our evangelization. Through this experience, we see that participants are becoming more open to using those personal gifts in the mission, developing a stronger understanding and fostering of true stewardship, and learning how to be true witnesses and share their faith journey with others. These parish-based small groups are certainly proven ways to encounter Christ, reawaken faith, and motivate that missionary outreach. And one thing that I wanted to really wrap up that frame of Be My Witness with is that we learn through this experience of small group faith sharing how to share our faith journey through our own witness stories. We begin to, like Jesus, meets people in the uniqueness of their personal story and situation through these experiences in small groups. I'll say that one more time. As you go through an opportunity of faith sharing with something like Be My Witness, you learn, like Jesus, to meet people in the uniqueness of their personal story and situation. And Be My Witness is broken down into these 3 key themes over 12 different sessions. There's the personal experience, which I invite you to think about just for a moment. Those personal experiences you've had of being evangelized. Think about a time when someone helped you to see God's presence in your own life. When have you encountered Jesus in your life? And how do you allow the Holy Spirit to work through you? In those first 3 sessions of Be My Witness, those are some of the topics that you would discuss with your small group. In sessions 4 through 10, these are really opportunities to explore what it means to be a missionary disciple. What are those attitudes and behaviors that we're bringing to the world? These experiences are shared in your witness videos that accompany each session, and we'll have a chance to see one of those videos in our time together today. And when we use words like evangelizing methods and missionary disciples, that might seem or feel big to some of us. So another way that we can think about this, or as we're talking to others about this, is how we're showing up and living our faith in our everyday life. If we're asked to raise our hands if we're Catholic, that would be an automatic response for most of us, probably. We don't even think about it. But if we're asked to raise our hands if we're a missionary disciple, we might pause before we respond to that in the affirmative. And then finally, the last 2 sessions, we begin to see the potential to transform society. What are those small but significant ways our words and actions can bring Christ into the world through the social ministry of the church? These experiences can be shared as an individual or as a group, or even throughout the parish to form into the community. These things are not going to happen overnight, usually, and they might not show up in big ways, but we do become more attentive to how our words and our actions as missionary disciples can begin to bring Christ to the world. So now I'm going to actually turn it over to you all for just a moment, if you're comfortable, to put into the chat how the gospel message has impacted your life. And the challenge is to use just one word. We did use this activity when we gathered the first time a couple weeks ago. So for those who maybe are joining us a second time and you remember what your word was, has it changed? We'll give just a few moments for folks, if you'd like to, jot that word down in the chat. Enliven, yes. Empowering, challenge, secure. This is great. We've done this slide several times with different audiences, and I don't think we typically get a lot of repeat words. Belonging, acceptance, hopeful. Thank you so much for those who've shared. Feel free to continue putting that word in the chat if you'd like. But this is a wonderful activity for us to be mindful of and to think about on occasion. How is the gospel message impacting your life? And can you do that? Can you think about what that is in just one word? We're all impacted in such personal and sometimes ever-changing ways by the gospel message. And our words that we share with one another as we think about this may vary just as much as our lived experiences and stories. I find personally such beauty and awe in how the same message can meet so many of us at all of the different places and stages that we are in our lives. I think that is so beautiful. So thank you so much for sharing, and feel free to use this activity with folks that you're working with in ministry as well. So just a quick question for folks, and you may have the answer to this if you've joined other webinars we've done in the past or been with us in person for a gathering, but we like to ask this one question to help frame our time together for small group faith sharing. And that question is, how do you see small group faith sharing to be different from something like a Bible study group? And again, if you want to put your thoughts about that into the chat, that's fine. We'll be able to see that. And when we talk about small group faith sharing at Renew, and certainly this may be universal for folks that are doing small group faith sharing, some of the elements, these 5 elements we see are prayer, taking that time together to pray and emphasize the centrality of God's presence in each and every one of our members, sharing, talking about God and our life experiences in a supportive atmosphere, formation. Even though this is not meant to be a course, when we get together for small group faith sharing, there's always a deepened understanding and appreciation of our gospel call, what the church believes and how we respond. Mutual support is that small group affirming each person in their life experience, encouraging gospel values as they call us to authentic Christian living. And finally, closing out with mission, the participation in the small group calling us to individual and group action, doing something that will influence, even in small ways, our families, our parishes, our neighborhoods, our nation, and our world. So just to set us up before we break out into our rooms in just a moment after we watch a short video, just a few gentle reminders about faith sharing. When we offer these experiences to folks, we'll just remind them that it is not intended to be a class, a Bible study, a time of teaching, a course about Catholicism, a place for problem solving, a therapy group, or a debate. Now, there may feel like some of those elements can surface at times when we're in our small groups, but these are things that we try to be mindful of to veer away from. And what faith sharing is an expression of prayerful reflection. Faith sharing is sharing a piece of our own story, our journey with its ups and downs, how we experience God in our everyday life, the good, the wonderful, the not so good, and the challenging. Faith sharing is God-centered, God always present and active in our lives. Faith sharing inviting us to articulate this presence and action of God. It involves speaking from your own lived experience as it's reflected in the scriptures. And because of that, there are no right or wrong answers. And it's never required that everyone share. It is okay to sit in reflective silence for an amount of time. And I do see, just to acknowledge some of the folks in the chat who have shared kind of the difference of Bible study or small group faith sharing and a common theme I'm seeing is that faith sharing can be more personal, and certainly that is true. So we're going to just a moment share a video with you that is from session 2 of our Be My Witness resource. Each of these resource sessions have a video accompanying them. So we're actually going to listen to Bob's story. And you'll see this just framing the topic here from The Joy of the Gospel from Pope Francis. I invite all Christians everywhere at this moment to a renewed personal encounter with Jesus Christ, or at least an openness to letting him encounter them. I ask of you to do this unfailingly each day. No one should think that this invitation is not meant for him or her, since no one is excluded from the joy brought by the Lord. As you watch the video, I just invite you to think about how this video is impacting you. Is there somebody in Bob's story that you feel you could relate to in some way? In your small breakout rooms, we'll invite you to share your responses to the questions that we're going to be providing to the group.
My mom did show me the importance of faith. She was a good role model. She took me to Buffalo Baptist Church, and I felt God tugging at me during that point in my life. I knew there was something special. We would go up and get saved. I never did that. I don't know why. I never went up during church and said, God, here I am. I was an only child. I thought the world revolved around me. Even though that we didn't have a lot of money, my dad was going to pay for my education. When I got to college, there was something inside me that said, are you good enough to make it in this world? Are you smart enough to make it in this world? And I drove myself into a depression. And anxiety, every time a test would come up, I would go out and party, and that became a habit. I would continue to throw myself in my work. I did not care if I lived or died. I never tried to hurt myself, but it got to that point. I would call out to God in deep desperation. Those were the times that I would call out to him. It was desperation, like, God, please help me. To fast forward just a little bit, I met a very special person. Her name was Laura Beth. She just had a peace about her, and it was a quiet peace. She was 25 years old at the time when we first got married. Pretty quickly, we realized that we needed faith. We knew that we wanted to be one unit. I came from a Protestant background. She came from a Catholic background. We found a parish, St. Athanasius, that we really, really liked. So we started going there. It really wasn't about going to church. It was more about going with her. I was sitting in church one day, and I got this feeling that you need to go talk to the priest about you. You've been going to church just to be with her for a long time, and something told me it's about you now. And I told Father Terry, I said, if I had one wish, I wish that he would take this anxiety and depression away from me. And the words that came back weren't what I expected to hear. No, you don't. He said, because the anxiety and the depression made you call out to God for help and brought you to him, and will give you eternal life. So I went through the RCI process. It was about a year. Great. It was awesome. I loved every minute of it. And then once I got baptized and confirmed, the director of religious education said, won't you just stay around? I've been involved in that for the last 8-9 years. Now I felt confident in my knowledge about the Catholic faith, and I realized I could help some of the people that had been Catholic all their life go down that road. I was doubting Thomas. Because of that, God said, I'm going to show you. He took that anxious, depressed person, and just like Father told me way back when, He will take that and He will transform it.
Hopefully everybody was able to hear, maybe see the video. What resonates for me always when I watch that story from Bob is the I'm gonna show you. I'm very guilty of, I make plans and God kind of giggles. So being more attentive to not my plans, but what is it that God is desiring of me and how that transforms and has transformed my own life. So Joe is working diligently behind the scenes to get everybody into their small groups. So we'll put you into breakout rooms in just a moment, and we'll have some questions that'll be up on the screen for you. And if you'd like, you can take a picture of these questions. You can jot them down real quick. We can also, I think, send them to you in your breakout rooms if you need to. But these are the questions that we invite you in your breakout rooms to share as you're comfortable. So once in your breakout rooms, we ask you, if you haven't already, to unmute and open your camera. Quickly introduce yourself, maybe your name, the parish you're from, the role that you have at the parish, and begin to answer these questions again as you're comfortable to do so. It's not required that everyone shares, and we do hope to participate to the extent that you're comfortable. We'll keep time and we'll bring everybody back to this larger group, probably in about 10 minutes. So much. Thank you all so much for participating in that, again, very bite-sized experience of faith sharing. And just important to share that when you're doing these kinds of things, typically in person, and it's with folks that you've had an opportunity to get to know. So thank you to all of you for being courageous and sharing with folks who maybe you've never encountered before. So I just wanted to take a minute or two and just have a larger group discussion again to use that chat, which I'm able to see as folks are typing in. But to ask you, how was that experience? And you don't have to share, great big lengthy how that was, but just kind of summarize how was that experience for you? Or if you'd like to answer our second question, why is small group faith sharing important to you? And I'll wait just a moment for folks who maybe would like to put that in the chat. Well, thank you, Hunter. Hunter shares, so I can keep up with these. It's easy for people to go to church and feel empty because they do not bring their faith into their daily lives. Small groups help people practice daily and walk and pray together. Yeah, Maria, this is one that we hear a lot. Small group sharing is important because it gives me a sense of belonging and that I'm not alone as everyone shares their story, similar situations that helps shed light on a situation that you may be facing. It's real and encourages one to reveal oneself. Yeah, thank you. And Donna, it's nice to have a group of like-minded people who want to increase their faith. We form a wonderful community of faith-filled people. Yes, thank you so much for those who shared that. And those are things that we hear often about why, how this experience may be different for folks, and why this can be so important. So as we look to close out our time, we will have a moment for some Q&A. We'll do our best to answer as many questions as we can. But before we move into the questions, just in conclusion of the synthesis report from the Synod, there's a page towards the end that's titled Proceeding Along the Journey. And one of the quotes that I pulled from this that I wanted to share with you all today is, as we look ahead to the period between now and the second session, which will be in October, this upcoming fall, let us thank the Lord for the journey thus far and for the graces with which he has blessed it. We entrust the next phase to the intercession of the Blessed Virgin Mary, a sign of sure hope and consolation to the faithful people of God as we continue our journey, and that we are all invited to welcome the small seed that this synthesis report represents. So we hope that as we started our conversation today, and I highlighted a couple of those topics, and we think about small groups and the impact that they can have, we welcome certainly conversations with you on a more individual basis. We just thought it was important to wrap up with that conclusion from the most recent synthesis report. So now I'll turn it over, and I've got a few folks behind the scenes here that are helping as well, keeping an eye on the Q&A on the chat. So we'll turn it to you all if you have questions that you would like to put in that chat. We'll do our best to answer them in the time that we have available. And I will also share before we close out our time together, we will have just a very short testimonial video of a couple that had participated in one of our small groups recently. So we'll give you an opportunity to hear from some recent participants in a small group. And then just a closing slide about our next session, some reminders there. Well, if there are still questions, do please feel free to put them in the chat. Or we did share earlier, and we'll share again with you a link that you are able to fill out and reach out to us, that we can reach out to you and have a more one-on-one conversation. Oh, we have a question. Any suggestions on how to create group leaders? Not everyone wants to facilitate. I'm sure that that's something. How do we start small groups? Yeah. These are conversations that we're actually going to dive more into on the June 11th session, more of the nuts and bolts really about small groups. And and how to turn small groups into small Christian communities. Yeah. So we're going to get into that in June 11th in more detail. But yeah, those are great questions and very helpful for us to know that those are the questions that you're thinking of. So suggestions on how to create group leaders. One thing that we found very successful is personal invitation. So if you know folks that you see a quality in them, to have that personal conversation with them, and ask them to think about it, ask them to pray about it. So that would be one suggestion that I would offer. How do you start small groups? Kay Dodds, we'd be happy to chat with you more one-on-one about that. That really differs. I don't say that just to kind of say we'll talk to you at a later time, but it really is unique for each parish. So what might work for you at your parish to start a small group may be very different for the parish down the street, for the other parish around the corner. So that's something that we can certainly chat more individually with you about. Yeah, and David, when you hopefully are able to join us on June 11th or watch the recap of that one, that's where we're going to really dive into the initial small groups, moving them into small communities. And that's so important. So just to speak to that for a second, the small groups are really that starting point for a lot of parishes, for getting groups formed, for getting those relationships established, and then the small Christian communities really building into support for the parish to help with fall festivals, to help with ministry gatherings, to help with different events that are happening at the parish and for formation. And yeah, parish leadership discerns who in the parish has the gifts. The pastor asks them to consider it. We never ask for volunteers. Okay, yeah. And again, that's something that every parish is going to be unique in how to find those leaders. Yeah, thank you so much for sharing with one another, for posing these questions to us. Again, very informative for us as well, hopefully for you all. So we will now, again, if you still have thoughts, questions, feel free to reach out to us. We're happy to continue the conversation. We love these conversations. But we will move into just this closing short video And then just a slide to remind you all of our next and final gathering in this series.
I think that anyone who participated in Be My Witness would find something out about themselves that they may not have known. The program is so well thought through. You have guided questions that are thought-provoking, and even deeper than that, they're spirit-provoking.
What I really liked was that they put like a modern twist on some of the teachings that you've heard before. So it was new, so it was thought-provoking. And then the discussion obviously was from people that we don't really know that well. So we got a second or third or fourth perspective on the topic.
So just a very, very short summary about the experience that one couple had with, actually with Be My Witness, with small group faith sharing at their parish. And we just do invite you, please, if you are able to join us, tell others. Our next and final in this series gathering will be on Tuesday, June 11th, 2 p.m. Eastern Time, continuing our conversation about the power and impact of small Christian communities and really starting to talk about what's next. So we thank you so much for your time today. We hope that you enjoy the rest of your day, the long, hopefully maybe weekend for you all ahead. Enjoy. Thank you so much again for joining us today, and blessings, many, many blessings to you all on the work that you're doing in your ministries and to create, establish, reestablish, reinvigorate the small groups and to develop them into small Christian communities at your parish. Thank you so much.